Okay, good morning again, and thank you for being here. Um, so, just some comments. I uh, like these opening readings, and I can feel my mind, you know, just shift. Oh yeah, I forgot. Um, I love in the first one the way it says, accept this belief that the purpose of my life is more for the soul than it is for the human body. Accept this belief, and a wonderful molding of character takes place. Now, this is from the 24-hour a day book. It's got nothing to do with the big book. And yet, you'll remember that when we get into the sex conduct inventory, um, it says instead of judging anybody else's behavior, we ask God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. And that's just a wonderful thing. And it's followed by the line on 83 that says, so we ask our Creator each morning in meditation to show us the way of patience and tolerance and kindness and love. Those are the ideals that our book is presenting to us as to how we are to be with the world, and as opposed to impatient, judgmental, selfish, and frightened. So I love that. And then the number two is coming from Ignatius, saying that doesn't. What matters is that you trust, love, and serve your Creator. I love number three because it's there. This is early in the book. If this whole thing means anything, it means that everybody, no matter what, can have this relationship with a power greater than your mind and greater than your body. And this is the big hang up for everybody. We feel it on some level, but the ego's voice is so loud. So I really feel in my own experience that steps 1 through 9, particularly 4 through 9, are trying to diminish the loudness of my ego's voice by really trying to understand what's the fear behind the negative feeling that I'm feeling. With resentment, what is the fear behind my anger? And we go to the third column and we look, is it my pride, my self esteem, my ambitions, my sense of safety, my sense of financial safety, my sense of emotional safety? Um, what is being hurt or threatened? And that's all the ego, because the soul does not feel threatened. The soul is already connected to God unquestionably, and the soul's not worried about this particular human life. The soul has been through a number of human lives, and what happens in this one doesn't matter as much as to the ego. Everything matters. Everything. And of course, its whole point of view is self-centered. I make everything happening out there about how I feel inside. Um, then we get the two alternatives. Keep doing what you're doing, don't change a thing, and go on to the bitter end, trying to pretend you're not restless, irritable, and discontent as you are. And this defines desolation and consolation, which are fundamental to this Jesuit thought system. He's really saying you got two choices. If you are in sync with God's purpose for your life, you will feel faith and hope and love. And when you are out of sync with God's purpose for your life, you're going to feel doubt and fear and despair. Um, ain't that something? So instead of serenity being a goal, serenity is a result. And it's a result of just to the extent, which means it's not a light switch. It's not either yes or no. It's just to the extent that I am humbly relying on God. And just to the extent that I am asking God to show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. Just to those two extents, understanding and action. So, 10th step. Our next job is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. We're growing in how we're understanding the whole deal, and we're growing in our effective response to our lives. And then I just love it. The big book brings in this, it says this most amazing thing. Every day is a day. This is page 85, the end of step 10. Every day is a day when you must. You don't tell an alcoholic that you must, you must live out the vision of God's will for your life, God's vision for your life in everything you do. And then it asks this amazing question, God, how can I best serve you? Thy will, not mine, be done. Do you think your ego's on board with that? you know, uh, my ego's not on board. It doesn't want, no, what do you mean? Anyway, how can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. This is the proper use of the will. And it just blows my mind. A week ago, I'm in Waterford, Ireland, doing this big book workshop, and we're talking about step 10. And I'm saying this, and I'm challenging them at your next day AA meeting. Stand at the door as people are leaving and ask them, how many times today did you ask God, how can I best serve you? See what you get. The general response you're going to get is, huh? What are you talking about? But that's what the book says. So anyway, so then the beautiful thing I believe about these rules for discernment is they're trying to help us answer this question. We're trying to discern, God, how can I best serve you? Can I serve you best by doing this, or serve you best by doing that, or serve you best by not doing this or not doing that? Everything is about decisions that we make, and bearing in mind that one of the huge parts of this process is recognizing our lack of power over our very own human ego personality. We lack power over our habitual responses to the life that we're in. We not only can't stay away from the first drink, that's the start of it. I can't stay away from the first drink. And if I take that first drink, all hell's going to break loose. I'm going to get drunk and I'm going to do something stupid. The whole thing is staying away from that first drink, which in the beginning I can't do. I lack power over my ego's desire to get the relief that it knows it's going to get from alcohol, and it doesn't care about the consequences. It wants the relief more than it wants to feel the way it does without the alcohol, obviously. So lack of power is always our dilemma, and I swear, whenever I will do the work to examine whatever fear I'm in, I will get down to my lack of power to not enter into a fear state when something out there happens. I cannot not do it. The first drink is nothing, frankly. The real thing is, so then as soon as I can admit I lack power over how I am responding to my life, it demands the question, well, you can either just keep doing it this way, go on to the bitter end, or try something different. And that is to get power over your own personality. But, by the way, we got to say, ABC, You got it before you can even enter into this process. You got to be convinced, A, that you are alcoholic and you cannot manage your own life. B, no human power is going to solve your problem. Well, what's a human power? Anything related to the body or the mind is a human power. Spiritual power is a whole different dimension. Spiritual power is not subject to the limitation that mind and body are subject to. Um, and that's where so many of us are hung up. We keep trying to use human power to solve our problem of lack of power. And then we attribute power to alcohol, to sex, to other drugs, to gambling, to shopping, to whatever it is that we wind up getting addicted to. And as the book says, once we lost power over the addiction's more powerful than our desire to live a different way. We're a hopeless lot until somebody comes along or the book comes along or something. Lack of power is your dilemma, and the only answer is to get power, but we're not talking human power. And if you're going to get spiritual power, you're going to have to learn how to pray. And then we've got in our program, we've got this circle and triangle. And the triangle is the unity of our meetings, the recovery work, one-on-one, in the book, in the steps, trying to recover our relationship with God, trying to recover our sanity, trying to recover our sobriety, no matter where you're at. And service as a way to take our minds off of this and whatever's going on with the complaints that this thing's got about its life, and try to do something for somebody else. The book calls it altruistic attitude. Instead of a self-centered attitude, I'm thinking about you instead of me. A huge part of our process, but the whole thing is in this circle of prayer and meditation, and it starts. The morning starts. Step 11 says, on awakening, not 2 hours later, on awakening. As I'm considering my plans for the day, I ask God to direct my thinking and especially ask that my thinking be divorced from self-pity, self-delusion, self-seeking. And it says it's only under these conditions that I can use my brains with assurance, which means I can't trust my own thinking, if I have not asked God to direct my thinking. And I've said over and over again, I've never felt God direct my thinking. And I got to go, I ain't feeling nothing, so I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking, and then maybe you'll give me an indicator I'm on the right track, or I'm should be very careful here, or stop. That's not a good idea. And I've been able to make that work. Although then, the first thing is getting an indicator, yes, no, or maybe. The second thing is then asking for the power to do it. Because on my own, I'm not going to do it. How often do you hear somebody in a meeting say, I wasn't going to come tonight? I'm glad I did. They probably did not ask God, you want me to go to the meeting tonight? Or maybe they did, and maybe they even did it subconsciously. They got a nudge to go. I was trying to help somebody stop smoking. And I said, well, when you're thinking about smoking, why don't you ask God if it's okay with God if you smoke? And they exploded. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. I know God doesn't want me to smoke. Oh, apparently you don't really want to stop smoking, because that'd work. If you did that, you wouldn't be able to smoke. This is the hard part, is turning away from the friggin' ego. Bill Wilson, simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant the destruction of self-centeredness. That's a pretty tough term. All right. So we're in these rules for discernment. We've been going through this whole book about these rules for discernment. And uh, the book has three parts. It has part one is a distinction between the true spirit and the false spirit. And I'm telling you, for me, I have to make this: the true spirit is my soul, and the false spirit is my human ego. Think about this. Um, the ego thinks it made itself because it did. I made up my own self concept here in my own mind, and then I declare it to be true. And I live my life as if it's true. It's a figment. My human ego is a figment of my imagination. It has no enduring reality. It will die when my mind dies. It will stop thinking about itself. My soul will go on. Any rate, I'm saying true and that. So the first chapter 2 was characteristics of desolation and the false spirit. And again, the feelings tell you whose influence you're living under. When I'm feeling faith and hope and love, I'm living under the influence of my spiritual nature within. Everybody's got it. Not everybody is aware of it or tuned into it. And then chapter 3 is desolation, characteristics of consolation and the true spirit, the soul, faith, hope, and love instead of doubt, fear, and despair. So then we get to part 2, how to respond to desolation and consolation. And that's stuff that we do. Everything that they suggest is something we're already doing if you're trying to live by the book and by the principles that Alcoholics Anonymous puts forth. When in desolation, chapter 4, we do this. When in consolation, we do this. Then he moves to part 3, which is what we're in right now, where we take this information that we've gathered in part 1 and part 2, and we try to use it to make decisions. So but chapter 6 was called Before Making a Decision, Lay a Foundation. And that's to be clear about what you're seeking, to develop a grateful heart, and to develop this idea of for God's greater glory. This is how the Jesuits say, God, how can I best serve you? What will bring glory to your nature or something? Then they talk about Ignatian indifference, which is detachment, where I'm not so wound up in the results. Indifference just means impartial. It means whatever. It means that I can meet the intensity of the human calamity with a sense of serenity. Well, it's okay. I know it's not okay, but the difference is that if I make an effort to bring it from this is not okay. The war in Ukraine is not okay. There's certain things happening that don't feel okay to me. And if I'm inspired to do something about it, to go into some action about it instead of just complaining, fine. But I'm not going to do it investing in the outcome. I'm not going to go to misery if I feel like it had no effect. Any sponsor knows this. If you're sponsoring somebody and they slip, they drink again, and you go down, you have the wrong perspective. The book keeps saying, Bill and Bob, AA number 3, we have a plan whereby we think we can stay sober. I love that we think we can stay sober. We haven't proven it to ourselves yet. Dr. Bob is 2 weeks sober. Bill is 6 months sober, and they're trying to find an alcoholic to deal with, AA number 3. And we have a plan whereby we think we can stay sober. And part of that plan is we got to take it to another. So we're going to make sure you're alcoholic, but then we're going to go to, if you are, then we're going to go to work and try to help you stay sober. And the guy does. From his first meeting, he stays sober and becomes a contributing member of AA. That's part of our plan. Anyway, so now I'm getting myself off here. Okay, so we lay a foundation. We were clear about what we seek. We develop this attitude of gratitude. We got this question: how can I best serve you? And we're not attached to the result. We're trying to make the effort, but we're not attached to the result. Then we get to chapter 7, 4 phases of good discernment. Phase 1, get quiet. Phase 2, gather the data. You're seeking information about your alternatives for action. Phase 3, dream the dreams. And then phase 4, which we're in now, is ponder the dreams. So dream the dreams is to one of the things that the whole spiritual exercises are based on using your imagination, which is considered a power of the soul. The powers of the soul in the Jesuit framework are memory, imagination, and a certain type of logic thing, and also freedom, which means free will, which means that I can choose whether I'm going to do this or whether I'm going to do that. And discernment just simply means choose. And the issue is whether or not I've got the power to choose, because most of the time we don't. So get quiet, gather the data, dream the dreams, use your imagination to tap into your deep desires. And this whole thing goes back to St. Ignatius's original experience. He's laying in that castle, leg horribly injured, and he asks for these chivalrous romance novels because he's all into chivalry and fighting and drinking and gambling and knights in shining armor and beautiful women. That's what he's into. And he wants to distract his mind from his pain and from his situation there. And so he asks for these and they say, well, sorry, Ignatius. All we got is a story about Jesus and lives of the saints. Oh. So he starts reading these things, and then he notices that when he fantasizes about his knight in shining armor life, he feels good, but it doesn't last. And when he starts reading about the alternative, the way the saints lived and what they were doing and what was on their mind and what their priorities were, he feels good and it lasts. And he goes through a spiritual conversion as his leg is healing, which it never quite did. He walked with a limp the rest of his life. But that's what he's doing right at the start. He's using his honest inner feelings to help him lead to where he's trying to go. We part of this is with the dream, the dreams is to let your mind go. Pondering the dreams is where we're trying to understand, is this am I living under the influence of my human ego that has its needs and desires? And my claim is my human ego has three fundamental aims: self-preservation, my sense of safety, self-gratification. I just want to feel good. I don't want to feel bad ever about anything. And finally, self-justification. I want to mentally justify my selfish behavior in order to live longer or something. And then this guy Ignatius comes along and goes, that doesn't matter. Long life, short life, rich life, poor life, healthy life, sick life, honored life, dishonored life. That ain't what matters, pal. So any rate, so when we're pondering the dreams, the part that we're into now, we're essentially trying to test whether this guidance is coming from our spiritual nature, which I'm calling the human soul, or our human nature, the body and the mind. Um, and I just, because it's fresh on my mind, um, I just want to read. Yeah. So in these workshops, when we get to step 11, we read a pamphlet. It's an old Oxford group pamphlet called How to Listen to God. And not AA, but it's part of what came before AA. And this is a wonderful process uh, of developing your relationship with higher power that comes down to sitting quietly with a piece of paper and putting your concern, what you're seeking, the guidance or the power that you're seeking, um, at the top of the paper with a question mark. And I don't want to lose my place, but I just want to say, I remember doing attending a big book weekend early on, and one of the things that they asked us was, what's more important, the right answers or the right questions? And I never forgot it, because the answer was the right questions. You know, if you're looking for the right answer, chances are good you're going to wind up in contempt prior to investigation. That's that's the risk. I'm going to state my answer, and there are huge odds that I'm practicing contempt prior to investigation. I'm saying I know this. The right question is different, because it keeps you away from your intellectual, logical mind. Um, and that's why I love this question, God, how can I best serve you? Which you can do you know, you could make it, God, what do you want me to do here? Um, you can take out the word serve if you, what do you want me to do here? How do you want me to react and behave in this situation that I'm in? Um, so, at any rate, in this how to listen to God, you write out everything that comes through your mind. You're not looking for whether it's coming from the ego or whether it's coming from the soul. You're just writing down everything that comes into your mind: movies, songs, a line from a song, any memory of a person's face, or it could be a simple fact. Call your mother, or whatever. You write it all down, and then you're at this part where you're testing. It calls testing. um, and so I'm just reading to you. This is on the third page of the pamphlet, How to Listen to God, and it's number 6. Is called Test. When the flow of thoughts slows down, stop. You've been recording all these ideas that come into your mind. What should I, mine always was, what should I do with the rest of my life? It's like, what should I do with the rest of my life? Um, Test. When the flow of thoughts slows down, stop. Take a good look at what you have written. Not every thought we have comes from God. They're saying a lot of these thoughts are coming from your ego. So we need to test our thoughts. Here is where the written record helps us to be able to look at them. And then it gives us 3 tests of these thoughts. The first, are these thoughts completely honest, pure, unselfish, and loving? Now, these were called the 4 absolutes. And of course, you don't talk with alcoholics about absolutes unless you're talking about vodka. And um, so they even changed the word. They didn't say absolute, they said completely honest, pure, unselfish, and loving. Which we're saying honest is a big big part of our thing. Pure means coming from the ego or coming from the spirit. Unselfish is already there, and loving is already there. So when I say page 83 says, we ask our Creator each morning in meditation to show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. That's our version of these four absolutes. So first, is it honest, pure, unselfish, loving? Second, B, are these thoughts in line with our duties to our family, to our community, to our country, to our religious order, whatever? Are they in line with life on life's terms, the situation that I'm in? Um, and then the third one, are these thoughts in line with our understanding of the teachings found in our spiritual literature? Is this congruent with what it says in the big book? Is this congruent with what it's saying in these spiritual exercises? So that's what we do. It comes from a number of places. And when God's voice within says, ponder the dreams, that's what it's talking about. You're now, when you dream the dreams, you're doing like writing down all this stuff. When you're pondering the dreams, you're looking at them individually and trying to figure out, this coming from my soul, this coming from my human ego. And I remind you, as one of the things A Course in Miracles says, human ego speaks first. It speaks loudly. Jim the car salesman, suddenly the thought crossed my mind. Jimmy, if you just put whiskey in the milk and take it on a full stomach, no problem. The experiment went so well. I did it again. Thus started one more trip to the asylum. But in the middle, he says, I vaguely sensed I wasn't being any too smart. I vaguely sensed this is not a good idea. This shows up big time in these rules for discernment, because that's what we're looking for, is this vague sense of putting on the brakes and not doing what you're inclined to do. So now I'm going to, when we've been in chapter 8 for a while, and last time we talked about offering my tentative decision, how we do that. I'm offering to higher power my tentative decision. And now I'm into the place where I'm seeking confirmation. I'm looking for God to give me a red light or a green light or a yellow light. And then the two other things we're going to talk about is what if I don't get any confirmation, what to do. That's the third thing. And finally making a final decision and acting on it. So I'm looking at the book, God's Voice Within, in chapter 8, and I'm on page 195. You don't have to have it in front of you. I'm just saying that's where I'm getting in here too. So, and I'm going to read this and then maybe change a few words. If offering the choice to God is a form of revisiting the phase, dream the dreams, and then ponder the dreams. So I'm looking for how I feel interiorly. This is interesting. They talk about what's going on inside me as opposed to what's going on outside. And we're looking for how we feel within. I now observe the inner movements as I pray dream. This is a term that Thibodeau uses, where I'm in a prayerful state, which means I'm quiet and I'm feeling grateful. I'm not feeling annoyed by my life. And I'm going through these different things. And he offers these ways of pondering the dreams. I pledge myself to one of the choices that I think are in front of me, eliminating the other possibilities. I realistically try to imagine the long-term repercussions of my choice. I'm just trying to think it out long-term. Do these post-discernment dreams bear the characteristics of consolation or desolation? And then he refers to a figure that's in the book, uh, that just provides a helpful way of looking at these things. I'm going to deal with that in a moment. Um, there may be times, for example, when I'm called to move away from some of the people who love and support me. There may be other times I need to make a radical choice that will not be popular among my family. So that's where we're so much looking for looking for our relationship with higher power, as opposed to um, uh, they oftentimes bring the confirmation from other people. You know, it is absolutely true that God speaks to us through other people. That's absolutely true. But the story of Job, where Job is living a righteous life, and then all hell breaks loose and he loses everything, and he's got these friends, they're coming along, and they start telling him what his problem is. And the point of the story is that the answer is in his relationship with God, and not to follow the advice that his friends give him, because they basically say, well, this is your fault, Job, you must have done something wrong, and that's why you're suffering all these things, so you better get right or whatever. So we're one of the challenges of this kind of work is we can't always depend on other people. We really have to go to how do we feel deep inside about what we're trying to do. Um, so then he talks about testing these different things, and gives some examples. Somebody trying to go into business for himself. Um, One of the pieces of advice is begin to live as if you've made this decision and see what happens. And you may remember also from the workshop, I bring up the example of Storm and Norman Schwarzkopf saying that when he was running the Iraq War in '92, and he was so far ahead of the Iraqis, and Inc. magazine is asking him about could he say anything, because the decision making process is such a vital part of any any enterprise, not just for profit, but any enterprise making decisions. And he said in his experience, he's found this, that if he's waiting to make a decision because he feels he needs more information, make a decision, any decision, more information immediately begins to flow, but you've got to be willing to change your mind. And I thought that was, for me, it's been just wonderful, because I would make a decision and then I got to defend it to the death because I have a need to prove that I'm right. Um, and so I've done this the worst in my investment life, where I'll buy a stock and more information immediately begins to flow. Stock starts going down, and I say, "No, I'm right, the market's wrong." So I buy more. If it was a good deal at 50, it's even a better deal at 35. So I buy more, and it keeps on going down. And I find out usually a year later why it was why it was going down, some information I just wasn't aware of. So it's a wonderful thing. Make a decision, any decision, as long as you're not making a decision you can't change your mind on. That's a tougher decision when you're making a longer term decision. And I love that, because then he's doing the same thing that Ignatius is talking about. The more information will immediately begin to flow is how you feel about it. So begin to live as if the permanent decision was made. Um, this statement, Ignatius boldly trusts a praying person's deep desires. Now, that qualification is a praying person, that I'm in a state of quietness, that I'm, in our work, it's honest, open, and willing. I'm quiet. I'm being honest about my feelings. I'm open to not self-justifying, but doing something different. And then finally, I'm willing to do something that my ego doesn't want me to do. I'm willing to go to the meeting. I'm willing to come here to this presentation. I'm willing to do something that way. Okay. Oh, he's making this point that God's confirmation is not the same as other people's confirmation. You don't always get from other people the same thing that you may have an inner sense of. So there are these wonderful things. I want to try to run through this, and then we'll stop. Oh shoot, I'm not going to get to that. So it's page 198 of the book God's Voice Within. It's 198 and 199, and he calls this figure 8 signs of confirmation or disconfirmation. As I pray, dream the consequences of having made the decision, and then he has these two different things. Like the first one, feel a little nervous, but deep down I am at peace. He calls that a confirmation. I feel fearful, anxious, or disquiet deep down. That would be disconfirmation. That's a red light in my red light, green light thing. If I feel I do not have all the answers, but I feel confident that God will lead me step by step. Despite my lack of certainty, I feel as though I am walking in the light. That's confirmation. Disconfirmation, a red light, I am agitated and confused. So confused is a big marker. That's doubt. Remember, when I'm in sync with God's purpose for my life, it's faith and love and hope. And when I'm out of sync, it's doubt and fear and despair. So I'm agitated and confused. I'm fretful about the future. I'm groping in the dark. Isn't that an interesting, walking in the light or groping in the dark? Next one is I feel God's nearness. I feel safe. I feel whatever. I feel I can match the calamity with serenity. That would be confirmation. I do not feel God's presence. This is usually I feel alone. I feel like it's just me. I'm all I got. I have no God in my life. This can be subtle, but certainly loneliness is a big marker of that. I am stirred by great desires to work, to create, to act, to move. I am stirred toward acts of faith and hope and love. Um, Opposite, disconfirmation, I feel paralyzed. I feel stuck. I feel tepid, bored, slothful, lazy. I feel unattracted to faith and hope and love. So those feelings are telling you this is not in sync with God's purpose for my life. This is doubt and fear and despair. I am stirred to action, which ultimately, if not immediately, leads to lasting unity and reconciliation with the good aspects and people in my life. That's wonderful. As opposed to I'm stirred to inaction or to action that severs ties, burn bridges with good things and people in my life. That this is our tendency to isolation. I got to get alone and figure it out. That's not a step. Confirmation, I am moved to spend more time with the ones I love and with prayer, church, healthy behaviors. I'm unattracted to bad influences in my life. Remember step 10? We will recoil from alcohol as from a hot flame. This would be disconfirmation. I am moved to neglect healthy, well-established relationships, neglect prayer, neglect church, neglect healthy behaviors, opposite of everything we're doing. I am attracted to bad influences in my life. I feel drawn to that stuff. Confirmation, I see good fruits when I prayerfully ask myself, where will this lead? Fruits of the Spirit is a term in some aspects of Christianity. These fruits are congruent with my principle and foundation. My job is trust, love, serve my Creator. Disconfirmation is I see bad fruits when I prayerfully ask myself, where will this lead? This is going to lead to not a good thing. I want to take a drink. Should I take this drink? I think that's not going to lead me to what I want. Incongruent with my principle and foundation. Confirmation, the bottom one on page 198. I feel as if I'm moving towards something good, like it's the natural evolution of the way God has been leading me for a while. It feels as if I'm saying yes to an invitation. It is congruent with past good decisions for my life. And then disconfirmation, the opposite. I feel as though I'm moving away from something, like I'm breaking away from that which has healthily nourished me all along. It feels as if I'm fleeing something that frightens me. It's incongruent with past good decisions of my life or resembles past bad decisions. And we've got three more, and then we'll stop. Uh, let's see. I'm on page 199 now, the top. Confirmation. I'm looking forward to talking about it with my support network. This is real interesting because the opposite of this, the disconfirmation, the red light is I want to keep it secret. I'm not going to tell my support network this. Here's my plan. I'm going to quit my job and move to Santa Fe, but I'm not going to tell anybody. I'll send them a postcard when I get out there. There divergence of views within my support network. Uh, Confirmation. I am stirred to act boldly, but in a measured fashion. Act boldly, but with patience. I can do it now, but I don't have to. I'm indifferent to the timing of the act. Red light, disconfirmation. I am stirred to do something that wise people in my life think is reckless or rash. I must do it now, although wise people are telling me there is no hurry. And then finally, confirmation, green light. I feel as if the other options on their own are moving into the background of my imagination. Uh, Disconfirmation, red light. I feel as if one or more of the other options keeps nagging at me. They won't go away. So next time we're going to meet next Sunday and we get to talk about, think of a sponge and a rock. It's a wonderful image of the action of higher power in our lives. I thank you all very much for your attention. I'm going to gong this gong and Mark will stop the recording and we'll have some open discussion. Thank you.